Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Up to No Good. My name is Hemali and I will be your host today and for all future episodes basically, so I guess you guys gotta get used to me. Since this is the first episode, I just want to give a quick little spiel about what Up to No Good is all about. One thing I've learned about myself over the years is that I'm a very curious person. I love to ask questions and I really enjoy learning people's life stories and understanding their perspective on things. I quite often have deep, meaningful conversations with people, sometimes who have a similar story to I do, or who are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and they ultimately have helped me change my perspective and shape me into who I am today. I also find more often than not that people are afraid to do the one thing that seems to be so easy to do, and that's ask. Ask the questions and open conversations to topics that we may not necessarily know how to approach all the time. And ask advice from people that we may not necessarily have easy access to in our lives. With that being said, today's topic is all about wedding planning through COVID-19. Some of you guys may know that I was supposed to have my wedding this year on April 10th, and obviously it did not go through, and it's been a very difficult situation to navigate through. So many people have been asking me for advice on how to navigate through this situation, and I thought it was only appropriate to invite Sonya, who is my wedding coordinator, to chat with me about this topic. Sonya is the founder and owner of Chic Events, which is a very successful event planning company here in Toronto, and she specializes in weddings. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how we're navigating through this situation as a vendor and as a couple, because it can be a very difficult situation for both parties. We really hope this video helps couples and vendors struggling through this whole unfortunate circumstance. And if you did like this video, please do not forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel, because there will be a lot more content that you don't want to miss out on. Hi Sonia, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm living my best quarantine life, you know? This is Sonia, who runs Chic Events, and she was supposed to be you still are, because my wedding's still happening, but yeah, still happening. So she was supposed to be coordinating my wedding that was happening April 10th, but obviously that's not happening anymore, so we're gonna have to postpone that to a new date. But yeah, Sonia is a event planner, a wedding coordinator. She does it all. She is like the person that you want to know in the wedding industry, because she gets shit done, and she knows literally everyone. So today we're going to be talking about this whole COVID situation, how it's affecting the wedding industry, and showing you guys the perspective of how COVID is affecting the vendors, but also like the brides, so you guys get a better understanding of both sides of the issue, because I think it can be very frustrating and sad for both parties, and especially when you don't understand what's going on the other side of things, it can be really hard to come to a mutual agreement. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to talk about. We all know COVID has been such a shit show. When you first found out about it, Sonia, what were your initial thoughts?
So when we first got to know about COVID, it was something like, okay, it's happening like on that side of the world. We're not affected. My wedding season's coming up. Yours is the first one of the season in April. And it was just like, okay, cool. Like, the world has like shit going on, but we're not affected. And then slowly, the NBA and sports teams, like that just kind of went to a standstill. And then, even with you and I, like at that point, we were just getting started. And I just sent over all the documents to you and said, hey, let's do a site visit. Let me know what days work for you. And for us, it was like, okay, getting the ball rolling. And I think yours was the first one because it was so early in March. And when you had called me, and I want to get into like what your thoughts were, because
Yeah.
I can only imagine. But when you called me and you're like, okay, should we postpone? Like, what should we do? Like, what if, all my family or friends can't be there? And I think after I got off the phone with you, that's when it got real for me. And I'm like, oh my God, okay,
Yeah.
and let's like reassess this. Like, is this going to affect Hamali's wedding, my, clients going forward, like after yours? And I think it just kind of like spiraled like downwards from there. And then before I knew it, it was like, okay, April all postponed. May has been completely postponed. And now we're dealing with June. So initially, I don't think I took it as seriously as I should have, because I didn't think it would hit home. And you don't think that something like that's going to happen to you. But I think just as it started progressing, it was just like, oh my God, like, what are we getting?
Happened so fast, like so fast. It's crazy.
Like, how was it for you? Like, what were your thoughts behind it? I mean, 2020 bride, you've been planning your wedding, you've done so much work, you're like pretty much a month away from your wedding, and all of a sudden you're, hearing about COVID-19.
Oh my God. I felt the exact same way you did, to be honest. Like, it was like, that's an across the world situation. Like, that's a them problem, not a me problem. And I think that's how most people looked at it at first, right? I remember like the first couple, like, especially right after the NBA canceled, like, right after that it was like a domino effect, like just one thing after another was closing, things were changing so fast, like things were shutting down. And I think for me it was like, initially when I started hearing this, I was like, maybe we need to like make this a small wedding and like have less than 100 people. And then it was like, okay, I don't think this is happening like at all. Like it was like you were in denial, and then it like slowly started to hit you like how serious this was getting, and then you're like, okay, well, clearly this is like going to be an issue, and like we're going to have to postpone completely. And it was for me personally, I wouldn't say it was like heartbreaking in the sense that my wedding wasn't happening. Like, yeah, that did suck because my wedding was, like something that I worked really hard to plan and blah, 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 blah. But like in my thought process, I'm like, okay, like I'm still gonna have a wedding. It's just a matter of,
Canceled.
sorry, say that one more time.
Your wedding's not canceled. It's just postponed. Your love is still there. It's just, happening later.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I felt. I was like, okay, it's still gonna happen. So like I'm not like sad about the fact that the wedding didn't happen. I think that was what was more sad, is that shit, now I have to like reschedule everything and redo this. And I think what really, really hit me hard was like all my plans that I had after the wedding, because there were so many things that I had planned to do after the wedding was done, like so many things that I had put on hold in my personal life because of this wedding. All of that is getting postponed. And I think that's what was really heartbreaking. Like there were so many things that I wanted to do with my career that I didn't have time for. There were so many places that Vikram and I wanted to travel to, because like we just didn't have the money or the time to do that before the wedding, because we had to like pay for the wedding and like take time off for that and blah, blah, blah. There's like, we want to furnish our house and like there's so many things that like required money, like either money or our time, which we both couldn't give because of the wedding. And now it's kind of like pushed back even further. And I think it's like, it comes with like the sadness of like the uncertainty of like, okay, it's okay that it's pushed back, but like, when is it going to happen? Like when will it happen at this point? And that's what's like the frustrating part. It's like, I don't even know when it's going to happen. Like, I don't know what the end date is. Like, I don't know when this uncertainty is going to end. Moving on, I think in terms of our actual wedding and going back to all of that, we did decide to postpone our wedding. So I just kind of want to talk about that a little bit too. And I know a lot of your brides have decided to postpone their weddings as well. So yeah, we decided to postpone. Obviously, like we didn't really have a choice at this point. We kind of had to, unless we were just planning on just getting like a court marriage type of thing, which we didn't really want. So we postponed, but we haven't picked a new date yet. We're waiting it out, and for us, it's kind of like we don't really know how to make a decision right now, just because there's so much uncertainty going on that we don't want to jump ahead and be like, okay, well, we're going to postpone to like October, and then October comes around and things still like we still can't have the wedding that we want. So like now we got to postpone again. And I personally did not want to go through that hassle of like rescheduling twice. So right now we're just kind of waiting things out until, I don't know, hopefully like until we really hear some better news, I guess. But I assume, I'm like hoping that will be around like June or so, based off of what I'm hearing in the news. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say when to postpone for sure. And I totally get, putting all the work in for your wedding once and then having to postpone, let's say to October or later this year, and then having to postpone again. Like, I think that's a lot of work. And I think anyone who is looking to postpone, wait until whatever your moment of certainty is and postpone to a better date. A lot of my clients from May and June of this year have postponed to 2021. And they're not taking a chance of, okay, let's try October, November. They're going straight into next summer. So yeah, I mean, I think it really just depends, and it's just case by case, and it really depends on the family.
Yeah, it does, because there's so many different factors. Like for us, one of the big factors is having out of town guests, right? And like, so for us, we were like, okay, well, I don't really know how this is gonna work if travel bans are still happening. Like all my mom's brothers and sisters are from out of town, and her brothers play a vital role in like our wedding ceremony. So like, I'm like, I would like them there. I mean, like, I'm sure we can go on without them, but I personally would like them there. I'm sure my mom would like them there too. And so, yeah, for us, that's like a big thing, right? Some people don't have a lot of out of town guests, or they do have guests, but they're not very like, I don't know if that's the mean to say, but like very important or close guests, right? So like you can kind of do without them being there. Whereas for us, it's like, okay, this is close family. We kind of need to take that into consideration. And I don't think travel is going to happen anytime soon, at least like not until the end of this year. I assume, just because of like, you don't want it to be recycled. You don't want COVID to be recycled into the next flu season. And like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, when it's over for us, it's going to be fine. Like the world's going to be fine. But I'm like, I don't think some people are taking into consideration that different parts of the world are going through this experience at a different time. So like, we might be like 3 weeks ahead of another country. So it's like, hey, you open the borders now and everyone can come in. But like, what if another country is still being affected and then someone from that country comes in and this all kind of just happens again? So I don't think travel is going to happen until probably next year. And yeah, it really is case by case. Like it depends on what kind of a wedding you want too, right? Like maybe like you're okay with having a smaller like maybe there's still a band, but it's for 100 people, and you're okay with having 100 people wedding, so you can still do it at this point. But some people are like, no, I want the full 500 people there. Like, so in that case, you kind of have to wait. So it's so different from person to person.
For sure. And even if we do come out of this, let's say, come this June or July, whatever month it be, I don't think everyone's going to run at the opportunity and be like, oh, there's a wedding and let's all go. I think people should expect to see their numbers come down a little bit in terms of guest count, whether it's due to, just some people, maybe their personal health, or they don't feel comfortable, or maybe it's financially, that they can't attend your wedding. So I think it'll play a lot of those factors in terms of your guest count shrinking down just naturally.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's like that's something that's so out of your control. Like you can't force someone to come to your wedding.
No, that's not fun.
Well, with that being said, what are your kind of steps to determine a new date? Because I know there's a lot of like, I'm still like in a very uncertain situation, but I will eventually need to postpone and reschedule everything. So like, what are your steps to kind of go about that, and how would you postpone a wedding?
Yeah, so right now, pretty much I'm telling everyone to wait about a month and a half to 2 months before their wedding. Say right now we're mid-April and your wedding is mid-June. Right now is the time that you need to be considering what you need to be doing. We can project what we anticipate in the next 2 months. And the thing is, if let's say right now they're like, okay, things are starting to look better. We get news that things are starting to look better and you're very hopeful for your June wedding. Keep in mind that you still need to do your final detail meetings with all of your vendors. Any of the vendors that you did not yet book, you still need enough time. So from now up until mid-June, if you don't think that that's enough time and I can't plan my wedding that quickly, or I have too many loose ends that got put on hold because of COVID, well, how are you possibly going to do that, with less and less time that you have? So I guess what I've been telling my clients is wait about a month and a half to 2 months out to make any decision whether you're going to postpone to a later date or whether you're going ahead with your wedding. Now, if you decide to postpone, these are the steps that I've been telling my clients in terms of where you should be starting and ending off. So number one would be reaching out to your venues. So in your case, you had two different venues for April 10th and April 11th. So in your case, you would email both venues and ask them for availability. So let's say you discuss with Vikra and your families, and you're like, okay, we think next May is a good time to postpone. So you would email the venues and ask them for all of the availabilities for Friday for the ceremony venue and Saturday for the reception venue in the month of May. Then you would do a cross comparison list and say, okay, this is the one weekend in May that my ceremony can fall on a Friday and reception can fall on a Saturday, and they're both available. That's how you would project your tentative date. So once you have your tentative date, then you would discuss that amongst yourselves with your family members, anyone who's traveling from abroad as well, just to make sure everyone is comfortable with that date that month. Once they're on board and it's looking like more of like a stronger tentative date, at that point, number two would be to send out a mass email to all of your vendors. So in that email, you want to let all your vendors know that you've booked thus far, what the original wedding date is, what the tentative date is that you're looking at. Send them all an email and then see who's available. And you want to do like a check off to say, okay, great, photographer is available, video, planner, decor, makeup artist, and so forth. So that's really a starting point. And from there, that's the only way that you can kind of move on. If you do the reverse, email all of your vendors first, see what their availability is, then email the venue, you're going to have a much harder time. There may be one or two vendors maybe you want to have a conversation with before you speak to the venue, but I would say for your own sanity, and keep the stress levels as low as possible, start with the venue, get the potential dates, and even if you're in between two, that's okay. You can share that with your vendors, email the vendors. Once you have a more a better idea as to, okay, these are the vendors that are available, let's go ahead with this date. Then you want to email all of your guests. And I am, I've always been against emailing or texting your guests and invitations, but I think this is the time that we're living in, and I would say send out a mass email or an e-bite to your guests and letting them know that you have changed the date with the new date as well. The worst case scenario is, I think, printing invites, losing the money out on that, and then being in a situation where you now have to reprint invites. One of my clients had to do that just last week for their wedding that's coming up. So you don't want to keep adding more expenses to this either.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And I think a part of it too, I think one thing that a lot of people were asking was like, well, what happens if your venues aren't available, or like your vendors aren't available? Like, do they get to keep that deposit? Do I get my money back? Like, how does that work? I think the money issue is a really big problem right now, because obviously people have given very large deposits to some vendors and venues, and some venues are being like, no, you're not getting your money, or vendors and venues are being like, no, you can't get your money back. And some are like, okay, yeah, like we'll give you your money back. So like, what are you telling your brides in that situation?
So a few things. So venue is where you want to start off at. That's your starting point. So the whole thing of, well, my venue's not available, that's your starting point. So you need to see what availability they have to come to a common ground. I have heard that certain venues are not giving deposits back, or it's non-transferable to a new date, or even with vendors, for that matter, where they're trying to postpone, they're not applying the deposit, or they're not giving their money back. I mean, everyone's doing it very different, and everyone, to be honest, has a business to run. So I think we're going to see a lot of variations within the industry. But, for my clients, I've said, if you postpone, we're available, we transfer the deposit over. We're not available, you need to, we would then happily refund the deposit. I think we're all in a situation where COVID-19 is very new to us. We've never been in this type of a situation before. But I feel like the businesses that are going to last are the ones that are thinking long term, as opposed to the very short term mentality where, okay, let me keep your, $500 or $5,000 deposit, and now you have a bad taste in your mouth with that vendor or that venue. Because let me tell you, like, things spread, and we hear it all in the industry as well. I've had some of my brides even call me and tell me about certain vendors that are giving them a hard time, and it's just a really bitter taste. So, and I think going forward, that bride's going to go and tell, I'm sure 10 other people about her experience and how someone screwed her over. So I think in the long term, I think the ones with, like, just mentality of, like, thinking long term, like they're going to come out of this much stronger. And even for me, as my business, like, my reputation is everything. For my clients, I'm offering, free advice, call me anytime, and let's see how we can get through this. And I'm there to help them, as opposed to also being a burden on them and saying, well, no, I don't want to help you. I need to think for myself.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Emma, because like as a bride and going to like my vendors and stuff like that, luckily I haven't had a lot of vendors that have given me any difficulty, but like I have heard situations and I have been in a situation where like I feel like someone wasn't being cooperative with me. And I think in a situation like this that's so unprecedented, it's like we're all struggling. Like we're all going through heartache, through we're losing money, we're losing our special occasion, we're losing like so many things. And I think the more you can be sympathetic towards that person, whether it's like you're a bride and being sympathetic towards the business, or you're a business and being sympathetic towards the bride, like I think that will make all of the difference. And because like when we first started looking into this, we were like, okay, well, what does the contract say? And I like, the contract's not going to say anything about a pandemic. Like, you know what I mean? Like no one's ever like really planned for a pandemic. And so like, I don't even know personally, like how much this contract holds, like if you were to take it to court or something like that. And like, are you even really willing to take all of this to court? Like that's going to be such a long process. It's going to be even more of a headache when you're already dealing with all this anxiety and like, stress of like replanning a wedding and blah, blah, blah. And I think that it's one of those things that you just got to be the best at negotiating. And coming from like a very human perspective of like sympathizing and being very empathetic and being like, okay, like let's work on this together. I think that's the only way you're gonna at least have a chance at maybe seeing your money or whatever. And like I think I worked in the wedding industry too, so I completely get what it's like to be losing business, and like it sucks. And it's like this is your income, and the wedding industry is a very like cash flow based industry. So like a lot of these people are using their deposits to keep their business running. And so if they don't have that money, they might not be able to keep their business running. So I think as a bride, sometimes you kind of got to take that into consideration. And then as a business, you got to take into consideration that, this bride is also like maybe they've lost their job, maybe like they're like also losing money. Like it's like a lose-lose situation on both ends, really. And so it's like, how do you come to a common ground? And I completely agree with you in the sense that like it will be the businesses that show good customer service and make this a less stressful situation for their clients and stuff that will thrive. Because that's exactly how I felt. Like when I was going through this situation with one of my vendors, I was like, okay, you're just like making me freak out even more. You know what I mean? And like I feel even more stressed out. And like even if I was going to continue working with you, like, I don't want to work with you anymore. Like, I don't want to deal with this, because like, what if something does happen closer to the day of my wedding, and like I know how you dealt with a situation that was so uncontrollable and so like over the top crazy, and you didn't treat it any well. So like, if it's a smaller issue, like, how much worse are you going to treat it, right? And like, how much worse are you going to treat me? And like, it also almost comes off as like, okay, well, you're just money hungry. Like, you really never cared about us or our relationship, or what I bring to the table for you, and like how much I'm helping you in terms of like giving you business and all this stuff. You don't care for any of that. You just really cared for my money, and you didn't care about giving me a good experience. And that's a big part of what you pay for. A big part of like why you're paying people is for the experience, right? And I think as a business, like, you need to keep that in mind, that customer service is a huge aspect of your business. So I think it kind of goes both ways. As like a business, you need to understand you're probably going to be losing money. As a bride, you also need to understand that you're probably going to be losing money, and it really is going to come down to how well can you negotiate, the two of you, and like how well can you come to a compromise. Like, can they keep your deposit and you push the date? Can you maybe the dates don't work, and can you work out something where it's like a split? Like, can you keep some of the deposit and I get some of my deposit back? Like, can you do something like that? And it all just comes down to that. I think you mentioned that you were suggesting like a split thing with one of your brides to negotiate. What was that tactic?
Yeah, so the scenario was that they had a decor vendor on board for their wedding in May. And at this point, due to COVID-19, they just decided to cancel their wedding and have a court marriage. So in their case, they had 2 design meetings with the decor company, and they reached out to me and said, okay, well, they're not giving our $3,000 deposit back. And for me, I think that's unreasonable. $3,000 for work that you haven't done. So, I mean, for me personally, I think it would be fair to do, like, if we've done 2 design meetings, they were 5 hours each. Okay, let's charge 75 or 100 or whatever your hourly rate is for those meetings, the time spent. Or do 50-50, like, here's 1,500 and I keep 1,500 because this is fair. Unfortunately, the core company decided to do none of the above and decided to keep the deposit, which, I mean, to each their own. We all have a business to run, and I know that some of the vendors, this is their full-time job, and some of us are going to be without pay for 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year. So we're really definitely counting on those deposits. But at the same time, it goes both ways. I think, like, it's exactly how you're saying it, like that respect level. It's just understanding one another, and at the end of the day, you want to compromise on a solution. Because I mean, if I had a vendor that I was dealing with that was extremely rude, well, I don't want you a part of my wedding now. You already have that bitter taste in your mouth. So why even bother, going forward with that relationship? Um, so I think it's really important to, for brides or even for a vendor to understand the other side, be empathetic, see what compromise, a common ground is that both of you can come to. I think that's really important during all this.
I think it will really show which businesses will survive and which will like end up going down the drain. Because even if you do end up keeping your money in some of your weddings and stuff like that in the future, well, I for sure would be talking. Like, if someone's giving me a hard time, like, all my friends are getting married like in the next couple of years. You know what I mean? Everyone in and around my age right now is going to be getting married. So like, I'm sure they're going to come to me and ask me for advice. And at that point, it's like, well, I wouldn't deal with so-and-so because of this situation. And I think that happens in any case, like whether it was like COVID or not, like how you handle your business, how you handle your customers and like your clients, and like the way you treat them will forever show how you will run as a business and how you will prosper. So that's definitely something I think as a bride and as a vendor you need to keep in mind. Now, I think we'll move into like the last segment of it, which is 2021 brides. Because I also, as much as my heart goes out for 2020 brides, my heart also goes out for 2021 brides, because they're equally, if not more, getting screwed over by this. So, what is your advice for 2021 brides? I know I'm gonna throw out a few questions at you, and I think we can just kind of go back and forth about it. So, what is your advice for 2021 brides for starting? I guess like wedding planning and things like that. And like what do you expect to happen with 2021 brides in terms of like, I guess, like, dates are being taken up and all that stuff. So what do you expect to happen for them, and what they need to keep in mind if they are planning on having a wedding in 2021?
So it's really funny that you're bringing this up. I was talking to one of my brides a few days ago, and she's like, in the midst of her crying, she's like, Sonia, I wish 2021 brides would just be so compassionate and empathetic and just put their weddings on hold until all of 2020 figures their shit out and then continue to plan their wedding. And I honestly died laughing. I was like, okay, hold on. Like, I get what you mean, and I'm going to come back to that. But 2020, you're at an advantage. You've already done the site visit. You've already booked your vendors. You've done the legwork, the research. And at this point, you were very close to planning or, getting to your wedding day. So you're definitely in an advantage. 2021 brides, let's say that, I'm sure this time last year, you were just starting to plan your wedding as well and going to do site visits. The industry is completely changed. Now brides, especially for 2021, they're doing virtual tours. They're going based off photos on a website, or calling someone that attended a wedding at a venue or had their wedding at a certain, golf course, and asking them what they thought and if they should be booking their wedding. Like, that's crazy, so definitely 2020, you're at an advantage. I get the whole panic of, 2021, let me just say, it's going to be crazy. It is a very busy year with the overlap with 2020 and then 2021 clients. I think it's going to be a mess. But at the same time, I think 2020 couples just really need to figure out if they're going to postpone. And if you're postponing, is it later this year or is it into next year? The longer you wait, it's less and less options will be available to you. We have hundreds of weddings every month in Toronto or the GTA area. So the longer you wait, you're not going to have very many options. So if you want your ideal date to be in July, well, May to August, that's prime wedding season. You're not going to find that the longer you wait. Even with postponing of weddings right now, we're doing month by month. So right now we're into June right now. So if you wait another month, now we're into July, then August. What is everyone doing? I personally have already had a few clients in August postpone to next year because they don't want to wait this out. They want to just, let's do it next year and we'll think about it then. So I really do think that if you're supposed to get married this year, figure out when you want to postpone to, jump the ball on that, do as much as you can beforehand. And with 2021 brides, again, my heart goes out to you, because starting planning, wedding planning, and now basing it on virtual tours, or maybe having to wait another 2 or 3 months until these venues open back up to do a site visit. And then again, you're slim pickings for dates that are available. But, I would say for 2021, start doing your research as well. So start to narrow down, shortlist the photographers, makeup artists, videographers that you are looking for. So that way, when you decide on the venue, you can start to also inquire and book the other vendors. So 2021 brides, if you're waiting for the venue or to decide on your venue, at least do the back end research and narrow down your other vendors. So whether it's photo, video, decor, hair and makeup, etc., start to do that back end research, because if you wait until July or August to start that research, that's going to take you another 4 weeks plus. So you're just going to waste time at that point. So you want to be proactive right now and do as much as you can. So when you are at that moment, you have the venue, the date, things will just start rolling.
Right? It's more of just like a making a decision at that point
Yeah.
rather than doing the research. Like at least do the research beforehand so that you can make a decision kind of way quicker.
Exactly. And also like for 2021 clients, like for me, my 2020 clients that are postponing to 2021, I want to be a part of their wedding. I get so consumed with my clients and I fall in love with each story and each couple. So for me to lose out on any of my clients from this year, that would just break my heart. So I'm keeping a lot of dates open for when clients are postponing to next year because I still want to be a part of their day. So not to say that my focus is not on 2021. It's just my priority right now is my clients getting pushed over. But I think for 2021 clients, if you are emailing out to photographers or decor companies and wanting to set up some of the meetings, it might not happen right away because a lot of us are dealing with this year right now.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a point that you made that I should have brought up before when I was talking about like not postponing my wedding yet. I think that's something that people really really need to take into consideration is that dates are slim pickings, and like that's something Vicar and I actually had a conversation about is like, okay, we're going to wait to postpone, but we're definitely not going to have our pick in dates and things like that, and availability from some of our vendors and whatnot, because now everyone's competing for the same dates. And that's just something that we have to deal with. That's something that we understand from a bride and groom perspective, that if this is our choice to wait, then the trade-off is that, yeah, we have more information, we can probably plan better, but the chances of people being available aren't that high, or the venue being available isn't that high, or whatever it is, right? And vice versa, if you postpone right away, then the chances of you knowing exactly how things are going to play out is probably not going to happen. There's still probably going to be things that you will have to work around, or like, you know what I mean, that are going to happen in the future that you just don't even know about yet. So I think those are the trade-offs, and I think as a couple you need to sit there and understand like what's more important to you. Is more important that you get the vendors and venues and whatever that you want, or is it more important that you get like you get all the information and can plan the wedding of your dream? Because I think there's going to have to be compromise in both senses, like of what you're going to get. And yeah, that's kind of where you're at, which is such a shitty situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, I feel so bad for 2021 brides, because they are literally at the shit end of the stick of this, where they really get no pickings. Like everything's being given like priority to the 2020 brides, and it's really hard. It's really hard to take in. And yeah, like you said, I would, if you're a 2021 bride, just try to plan as early as you can. If you know things for sure, then by all means book it now. I remember someone, when we were on live together, someone had asked like, well, what do you do, because you might not fully understand your financial situation? Like, do you still give deposits to people? Like, how does that work? Like, do you still want to be booking people at this time? Because, well, you don't really know what's going to happen in the future. Do you still like there's that whole limbo too. It's like, okay, well, if you are going through with your wedding and your wedding is coming up or whatever it is, like, and you still need to continue to book people, do you give them the deposits? Like, what do you do? And like, what if you don't really know your own financial situation? Like, how do you go about working around that? So I'll let you answer that one first, and then I'll kind of give my point on that.
Yeah, I think if you have that level of uncertainty in terms of financial, wait for it then. At the end of the day, like, I feel that if you're going to go and book a vendor right now, and any vendor and for any of my clients going forward that we're booking, we have a clause within the contract that clarifies COVID-19, what to do if you have to postpone, or what do you do if you have to cancel. So that's just something that naturally should be in your contracts now going forward. But with that being said, I personally think that if you had a vendor and you were unsure because for financial reasons, I would hold off on making that decision. Or maybe, for example, let's say your decor budget right now is, I don't know, let's say 10,000, okay? And right now you're comfortable with that amount and let's say your deposit is $500 or $1,000. Okay. So maybe, come next year, depending on your financial situation, you want to bring that budget down to, let's say, 5,000. If your vendor can still work within those means, you should still be okay to work with that vendor. You're just bringing the overall vision, you're scaling it down. Or vice versa. Let's say your budget right now, you think it's going to be 5,000, but next year you're up to 10,000. So if you still really like the vendor and the quality work that they do, whether it's decor, photography, I would still go ahead and book. But again, if you're really uncertain and you're really unsure about your financial standpoint, I would say just hold off until you feel more comfortable, but then less pickings.
Yeah, it's always that trade-off. It's like, okay, well, hold off, but then you're gonna have less pickings. But if you do it now, then you'll have, the pick of the litter type of thing. For me, like one thing. So after we were done our live, one thing I said in our live was like, well, maybe there's things that you kind of want to book first that are more important or whatever. And I think I personally said that wrong in the live, because like it's not about what's more important. It's like in general, like it's about what's most important to you. And I think that's something that you need to sit down and prioritize and be like, okay, well, these are the things that I do not even want to compromise on for my wedding. Like I want this, and this, like for sure. So maybe those are the things you focus on, like finding vendors for it and deposits for it and things like that, because those are the things that you think will make your wedding special. And then you can kind of move forward with that, and at least you get those things for sure. And then everything else you can kind of hold off on for a little bit until you feel a little bit more certain about what's going on, especially like with your financial situation or what's going on with this whole COVID situation in general. And that way you kind of at least have some picks, like at least some things that are working in your favor, rather than like nothing at all type of thing. So I think sitting down with your significant other, and depending on what your relationship is like also with their families, and prioritizing those things in order of like what you actually want and need, then you can kind of move forward from there and save, quote unquote, right now your money to later on until you need to finalize those other details, because everything is kind of going to go through and things are going to work out and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, is to prioritize. I think that's what we were talking on the live, is the, if a vendor is less on your priority list, they shouldn't be getting booked right now. Just wait, book the bigger vendors that are limited to one wedding that day or one wedding a weekend, that you either get in or you don't, versus, maybe another vendor who does multiple cakes in a day or multiple vinyl floor installations a day, where they have a little bit more leniency. So, I think for sure, like someone like photographer, I know some decor vendors, they only take on limited number of weddings per day or per weekend as well. So I think definitely prioritize your vendors and see which ones are, priority in terms of their bookings and how many they are able to take on, and then kind of go down. I feel like we covered a lot today, and this was a lot of fun doing this with you. And I'm sure super helpful for 2020 or 2021 brides as well. And of course, hearing your story and you sharing your thoughts and what you kind of went through, I'm sure that's great for them too.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think everyone, like you said, is going to really benefit from this. And it's so helpful coming from someone, because I think people were just asking me as a bride, and I'm like, honestly, like I worked in the wedding industry too, so I can kind of give you that perspective, but I'm not in the wedding industry anymore. So it's hard to say because I'm not living through it, right? And I think it was super helpful hearing it from a vendor perspective and a bride perspective, just so everyone can kind of be on the same ground and be sympathetic towards each other. And I really hope that's what happens. So I really appreciate you giving your insight, especially with all your knowledge that has to do with the wedding industry. Like, you are the pro. So I feel blessed to know someone like you.
Thank you. Thank you. So good to do this too with you today.
Yes, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.
Bye.